Edgeless Horseman here. It's 1st of May 2024. First of all, thanks to the sponsors. I have 3 new sponsors actually: Kodiak Copper, Hannon Metals, and Home Run Resources. Probably know about these. This is actually a silica sand company, which I think is quite interesting. I'm invested in all 3. So first of all, if you're in Frankfurt, I'll be on a panel there at the Deutsche Goldmesse. It's about digital infrastructure. Not my strong suit, that's for sure, but hopefully it will be worth listening to, and hope it's going to be a good show. Let's look at markets. Apparently FOMC happened like 39 minutes ago or 9 minutes ago. I'm not 100% sure. I never watch that stuff anyway, simply because I don't have a single edge. I have no idea what to expect out of FOMC, and I have even less idea what I think or how I think the market is going to react, and if it's going to be short-lived, if it's going to be medium-term. What's the medium-term impact going to be? What's the long-term impact going to be? And of course, does it at all change really anything in terms of the value of the companies I own? No. I mean, even if FOMC have gold and silver up 1.2 to 1.4%, who gives a crap? Didn't make the ounces go up in my juniors. And of course, they're not going to be in production for, if ever, it's like at least many of them several years at least until they could get to see any sort of production. I mean, it of course has some effect. I mean, it changes the price because people, even though a daily swing has almost no impact in a sense to the long-term value of any metals project. It's like you don't base, a mine that's running for 15 years, it's not decided how much margin or how much money they make on any single day. It's, every day over 15 years. But still, it's gonna make them, market swing. But I don't think I haven't seen much in the retail sector, so I think it goes to show that the volumes we saw, what was it, like a week or 2 weeks ago, or maybe 3 weeks, I guess might have started a month ago or something, when we started to see relatively large volumes in juniors. I think that was just a shot across the bow, or however you would call it. It's like I don't see any frenzy from retail. I don't think any single person almost from the herd is in yet. I think that's just that volume is mostly people who've been looking for at this sector for a long time and thought that simply, hey, this is cheap enough, I think they're gonna go higher soon. But we haven't seen really momentum catch up. So I see the recent move in juniors as the first leg of a potential bull leg, or even a first leg in a first bull cycle, or first step in a first bull leg within maybe a multi-year bull market. Who knows? I just know Felix Zulauf says that he expects the next bubble to be in commodities, and he doesn't expect it to really peak until the late this decade. So maybe we'll have a volatile wavy movement, but upwards on average for the next 6 years. Who knows? I'm positioned for it, obviously. I like a lot of metals. I like the juniors more than the metals, because if the metals are cheap or not, that's more up for debate. If the juniors are cheap, I don't think that's up for debate. They are super cheap, a lot of them. And again, like always, that's the only thing I focus on, really, because this can reverse today, it can reverse tomorrow. We could be at $2,100 gold in 2 weeks, or we could be at $2,500 gold in 2 weeks. I have no idea. I just know that the crash has basically happened already in the juniors. The next big move is up. I just want to make sure that I'm in it until that happens. however long that takes, because it's going to be worth it. And if we have down action first, whatever, I don't care. That does not change. And no chart, no short-term chart or any chart really, change the fact that the next big move in juniors is going to be up. The only question is when. And how we, going about seizing the opportunity. If you're in just pure shit coast, that's a bit hard, of course, because if it's in 2 years, maybe you will have been diluted by 50%, and maybe there's no value creation over that time, so just dilution, whereas a good company might have added 100% growth in resources 2 years, and it's going to go up even more. But I don't pay attention to this really. No junior I own is suddenly cheap or a buy simply because silver is up 1.58 and gold is up 1.33. I think they're cheap even if gold was already down to 2,000. That's the thing. That's a huge margin of safety. Let's look at some news. Where was let's look at the first one. This is, I think, the most interesting one for sure. You have Red Pine, which was, I think it's in the top 15 in the HODL folio. This is the Advanced Gold Explorer in Ontario, Canada, in the Wawa Gold District, close to a bunch of other projects and what have you. So not the funny thing, this is one I would consider to be one of the safe ones. They already have a resource, I think it's from 2019. They've done a bunch of drilling since 2019. They have Alamos Gold as the largest shareholder. And some recent news was Michael Michaud to join Red Pine as its president and CEO. That guy, they poached him from Wesdome Gold Mines, and then they got Alice Murphy from Alamos Gold, which is the largest shareholder. And all of a sudden, like one day after, they announced that Red Pine withdraws previously announced assay results for Wawa Gold project pending further review. Reports that it has discovered inconsistencies in certain assay results from the Wawa Gold projects, which were previously publicly announced by way of press releases and which may also have been disclosed or used in certain or other disclosure documents, such as the National Instrument 43-101 technical report of the Wawa. Accordingly, the company hereby withdraws all its previously announced assay results of the Wawa Gold project and advises that such results and the disclosure that such results are based on should not be relied upon. I mean, I have never seen a news release like this where they're like they're finding inconsistencies with between in certain assay results. Okay, so in certain, okay, they're already saying that in certain. I mean, obviously they probably haven't looked at everyone, so it's like they've found enough at least that are just simply inconsistent, and so they're withdrawing all assay results, basically saying that okay, we can't guarantee any of them. I mean, that's how it looks. I obviously I shouldn't say. I don't think it's like every single assay is just salted core, if you know what I mean, like a BREX type thing. But okay, so they're going they're going to town with a tomahawk. They basically retract every single assay. They even took the presentation down because obviously, especially if they if they have to look, let's say, on the assays that produced the 2009. I think it was 2009 2018 resource, then that's also in question. How many ounces there actually were and whatever. So obviously the sky is falling today, which is not too surprising, because again, I've never seen and especially given that it feels like a complete U-turn for the case, because they're getting high profile CEO. They're getting a board member from Alamos Gold. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, nice. I mean, more people obviously they like this enough that they're getting on board. So it felt like, okay, you have even more proof of concepts. That's like, if because I don't think these people would get on board unless they like the project. And then the very next news release is like, okay, we take back every single assay we put out. One interesting thing on that topic, and here we have the Realist. I recognize his nickname. I've seen him in. He did a lot on Snowline, etc. I don't know him, but he seems like a great guy, well-meaning guy, and I think he's a geologist. Not 100% sure, but he says, I think this is an overreaction. It might have something to do with the attached image. There was likely a bias in terms of which samples went to the lab. When visible gold was noted, a high grade was expected. VSP verification samples were much lower than Red Pine originals, the images from the latest tech report. Potentially similar issues to what Newfound Gold experienced early on. That I remember. I talked about that one when it happened. Yes, there's a big difference between originals verification, but this can happen in Arcan nuggety gold deposit. It is quite common to note VG in a sample and have one half of the core run high grade and the other half of the core other half at the detection limit or very low grade. Sampling methods need to be consistent though, which doesn't appear to be the case here. So let's look at this slide. So here you have I guess these are the announced assays from Red Pine, and I'm assuming that's one half of the core. And you can see, the first ones are from the Jubilee. Actually, they're kind of inconsistent as well, actually. But here in the Minto, I guess that's when the nuggety nature really kicks up. You have the half of the core they sent in graded 26.93 grams. So that's what they reported. Obviously, 1.12 meters of 26.93 grams. This is, I assume, the check sample, the other half of the core, and that graded 0.14 grams per ton. So if they've sent that half to the lab, it would show 0.12 meters of 0.14 grams per ton, and obviously wouldn't really be noted in the news release. Instead, they got a highlight hole, pretty much. A bonanza grade hole. It's easy maybe to think that at first, like, well, okay, that means, oh, this is the real stuff. In this case, we're talking zero gold. This is obviously not economic. 0.14 or 1.12 meters or 0.19 grams per ton over 0.96 meters. But let's think about it. There's two halves of one core. So in reality, it's assuming again, if I'm not misinterpreting this is the half of the core that got sent in and sampled in these holes over, from these levels to this part of these holes. Okay, so half of it graded like this. That's what was announced. That's the core, that half that Red Pine sent in, and this would be the other half of the core. So in the Jubilee, for example, yes, there's difference, not as much as Minto, but in the Jubilee zone you see 13.79 one half and one is 10.3. So together that's like 24 grams per ton for two halves, and then we divide that by 2, then we got 12 grams per ton. The mean from these two halves. So this might be closer to 4 this might be, well, 11.5. This actually was even this was even higher grade, but obviously I'm assuming this was no VG to even use as selection bias, if you know what I mean. Here, for example, okay, you got 26 divided by 2, so that's 13 grams per ton, not 21, but still it's like one. I mean, it's a difference, obviously, but still. 13 grams per ton over 1 meter. I mean, who knows? That's probably economic, I would think. And here you have, I mean, here's more of a bigger drop off, that you have like 64 grams per ton total. So divide that, 32 grams per ton. Obviously that's bonanza anyway, but not as high as this. And here, I mean, here is where it really has an impact, because if the one half is almost barren, one half is grading 27. So let's divide that by 2, so that's 13.5 grams per ton, not 26 over 1.12 meters. And in this case, it's more like 23 grams per ton over 0.96 meters. So, I mean, nobody really knows what's exactly going on, but this, I would think, is a good guess, because that's kind of what they got in Newfound Gold's case, I think. And if I'm not mistaken, I think... I don't remember if there was any like conclusion in at that time, but I remember the panic. I mean, when it happened, obviously Newfound Gold has revalued higher since then, and Eric Sprott has been adding a bunch of stock in the market. So yes, there was also some inconsistencies, but it was also, they had a lot of visible gold up at the Queensway project. That doesn't mean that the Queensway project is worthless or has no gold. It's just that some samples, let's say some of the grades, the highlighted grades are maybe not as high, if you know what I mean. So in a per ideal scenario, I mean, we have to assume that, it's probably a surprise to the downside in some holes, like this. Okay, this isn't a good example, but in this case, for example, that is like more like 33, not 57. This is more like 13 and not 26, and this is more like 23 and not 46, yada yada. So I'm assuming it's like the base case I have, if this is indeed the problem we're talking about, or that's the issue, then I'm simply expecting less bonanza grades, let's say, and maybe some intervals suddenly become uneconomic from being economic. I mean, that's obviously possible as well. So like with Newfound Gold, like nobody knows, right, what can happen. In Newfound Gold's case, yes, they kind of had a similar thing going on, but they didn't retract all assays. That's like the alarming thing, that they're literally withdrawing, taking back every single assay. And I have no idea, again, if this is the case, what they're gonna do. If this is the case, how long it takes to sort through this, yada yada yada. That I don't know. And in Newfound Gold's case, that dip proved to be kind of a false alarm in a sense, because Newfound Gold is back on track, and they're growing, and there's obviously gold there. I mean, there's obviously gold in this system. So I mean, I think maybe some are scared that, oh Christ, this is a BREX type situation where there literally is no gold. They salted the core. That I highly doubt. And of course we have things like, well, actually, this came up on Twitter, and here you have the realist. So I mean, his conclusion, I think he had the same conclusion in the forum. Got an NFG sample bias case. Sounds like it could be. I think it's an overreaction, and there's potentially a good buying opportunity down here. Westom and Alamos have been doing DD on this for years. I'm sure they are aware, maybe the incoming CEO. So yes, of course, I mean, to his point, obviously Alamos Gold and whoever else have Alamos Gold and who else? Oh, yeah, well, I guess Alamos Gold, since they're the largest shareholder. Of course, or everyone in management or what have you. It's like, obviously everyone has read the technical report, especially if you're Alamos Gold. So you're probably, to his point, aware of this, and he noted that Weston was probably aware of this as well. So it's like, there's no surprise it's a nuggery system, let's say. And this is from the technical report. So these scenarios here, where the one half is much lower grade than the other, and this is what was reported, that is in a public document. This is from the technical report. So the question is like, okay, how widespread is this problem? How much does it change the case? Now we're down to 17 million, and I said as much, like one of the first posts I did today is like, well, first of all, wow. Second of all, okay, do we know? Or I was gonna say, I don't know whether to buy, hold, or sell, right? Because like this is very hard to quantify or qualify or to measure in a qualitative way. And I said the same when the NFG thing happened. I know some people talked about BREX, and I mean, let's say the people who are biased against newfound gold, they kind of used it as cannon fodder, like, yeah, I mean, this is a scam, whatever. It's like, obviously it's not a scam, newfound gold, and I don't think this is a scam either, in a sense that's like, I'm pretty sure there's gold there because there's VG and it doesn't look like salted core, whatever. But is there a systemic problem of a lot of assay results having been higher than is warranted? That is a fact or a problem. And as I like to say, I mean, everything. If news happens, the value changes, right? The risk-adjusted value changes, but we also have a new price. Now it's minus 56%. It's down to 9 cents. It's at 17 million CAD. We can't go back in time. It is what it is. We now have a new reality and a new price. The question is, okay, what do we do? Hold, sell, buy. And again, in this case, I don't know the implications. Like, what's the impact going to be? How long is it going to take? Are there going to be legal actions? I mean, yada yada. I don't know. I just know that right now the whole shebang is priced at 17 million CAD. And that's, I mean, you can see juniors without much trading at 17 million CAD. And so this is obviously not anywhere close of pricing in an economic project at this point in time. In Canada, at a brownfield site, and of course we know there's historic mining and all of that in there. So again, we know there's gold there. The question is, how much does it change the value of red pine? And it's interesting, I mean, the timing, was it like an Alamos gold nominee came in, it's like immediately saw these discrepancies and forced out this announcement, whatever. I don't know. I mean, the timing is pretty cool though. That is like last day of April, yesterday, and officially joined, and then it's like next day it's like, oh, we take back all the assays we've ever done. I have a bias to buying cheap, obviously. So this is, I have actually bought some today. I think I bought first around 11 cents. Then it went up to like 13 cents. And I wasn't prepared to buy more. I mean, it's not a huge position, but still, I mean, it's not fun, not after a 4-year long bear market. But one thing I would note is like, this feels shitty, but at least we can't really go back and see, wow, how dumb we were, we made mistakes. I mean, I get more pissed off if I made mistakes, and that's, I mean, if I'm at fault, if you know what I mean. I didn't realize this, or I didn't realize that, or I bet too much assuming this, or whatever. But like, in this case, I mean, this project has been around. Alamos Gold is the largest shareholder. You have a big guy from Wesdome Gold Mines getting on board. So it's like you're sitting there thinking, it's like, okay, Alamos Gold likes this project. That Wesdome Gold guy likes this project, and you get an Alamos Gold nominee to the board. All of that is like third-party validation in a sense. I mean, obviously, it's like Alamos Gold would not have invested in Red Pine if they didn't like their asset, and they have read this technical report. And there was, I mean, 50,000 shares short. So there, in my opinion, there was no sign at all that we would ever get a news release like this today. That's the good part. So we can take it personally, at least, because there were no shorts predicting this. We have third-party validation. We have a big guy from Wesdome come in. So it's like, because I've already seen at least one guy on Twitter, which, I mean, he tends to do that he's like, okay, who promoted this? Is this, is this a scam or whatever? It's like, my point being that's like, sure, if you're in on a scam, that's one thing, but it's like no one in the market had a clue this was coming. Who knows, would the Wesdome Gold guy have joined if he thought this would be coming? Alamos Gold, maybe they kind of knew it was coming because they had what was I gonna say? They were a big shareholder. It is interesting. No, I'm not gonna go to how do you say it? Like conspiracy theorist on you, but it's like, I don't know. I mean, I've been talking recently on Twitter. It's like I would expect Alamos Gold to buy this sooner or later, or someone to buy this. I mean, it's one of the most advanced projects in Canada, and the permitting angle looks pretty favorable, which is kind of rare. So yeah, I mean, I added a bit when I saw it go down to 9 cents, and also read the realist, his take on it. So, like always, I mean, we can only lose 100% from 17 million. If this is like a, I don't know, company killer thing, then I'm gonna lose the money, all the money. If it's not a company killer, let's say the value got cut down by 20%. Now I'm just throwing numbers out there, but the price went down 56%. So in that case, it actually got even cheaper. So it's a better buy today, 56% lower than yesterday at whatever the price was, 21 cents. Simply because value didn't go down as much as price. I can guarantee this. I see this more now, given that I am not fully up to speed what's actually going on. I see this as kind of a high risk, high reward scenario. But I'm a sucker for bargains. At 17 million, it's like, I mean, it's almost like a discovery story at this point. 17 million is like, okay, or they're gonna find something, then it could be worth something. I mean, they obviously have something. Last resource was 600,000 ounces. They were aiming publicly that they're gonna hit 1.5 to 3 million ounces in the next MRE. Now, who knows? You know what I mean? But still, it's almost like a high risk, high reward exploration play. 17 million, if this actually becomes something, if this is not a project killer, then this could obviously go a lot higher. There's no guarantee of that, so I'm not going balls to the walls into this, but I hope you get my points. And on that note, which is interesting, I mean, like, made me think about First Nordic, for example, where it's like you've seen in introduced by Taj Singh, and obviously people who follow the stories, like that's an Agnico Eagle resource done at $1,300 gold price for First Nordic. So all of a sudden, a thing like this suddenly appreciates what the value of an Agnico Eagle, like the best miner in the world, best gold miner in the world. If they're doing the resource, given how conservative they are, given how professional they are, given that they're literally the number one gold miner in the world in terms of quality, that resource you can take to the bank and then some. So this is at least a reminder that's like, yep, there are some, stuff can happen in the junior sector. But this wouldn't happen in, let's say, Agnico Eagle wouldn't obviously do this because they're actually miners. They care about the actual economics, not promotion, for example. So who knows? Maybe not much changes for Red Pines project, or a lot changes. I don't know. But it's obviously from a promotional standpoint, it looks better if you send in 57 grams per ton instead of 6, or 27 instead of 0.14, even though the reality might be in between, that is actually 13 grams per ton, for example. But it's interesting. I mean, it sucks, the paper loss, and it's like every HODL portfolio basically has red pine as well, so that's taking a dive today, of course. I think those positions might be like 4%, whatever, so portfolios might have lost 2% on paper today. But that's the beauty as well, diversification in a sense. It's like the largest positions, and I wouldn't mind having this as an even larger position. That's how safe I thought it was. That's the one you don't think you need to fear, but it's at the same time, if you're diversified and you have a bunch of smaller positions, you don't need to fear them, in the sense that even if it goes sideways, you're not going to get killed by it, if you know what I mean. Another one, Kodiak Copper, that's a new sponsor. Actually, I've been aware of this for quite some time. It's a Discovery Group company, and they have Tech as their largest shareholder, I think. So that's, you probably see that theme. That's like, I love when there's third-party validation, where people smarter than me, or companies smarter than me, are saying something has potential. Then I have to be smarter than them to say there's not potential. Anyway, I think Kodiak has a market cap of 30 million. So it's down quite a bit since the heydays, when copper was actually hot as well. So we're here now at 30 million CAD. So they put out a news release. Kodiak reports new copper porphyry discovery 1516 zone and final 2023 drill results. I talked to the company. You can look up the assets yourselves. I mean, this was, for example, 0.12 copper equivalent, or 258 meters. Broad zones, but obviously nothing to write home about. There are no highlight intercept in this news release. But thankfully, again, I talked to the company to get me up to speed, because in my opinion, I have a harder time wrapping my head around copper porphyry plays than I have gold and silver plays. So this is here's the actual land position. Here's where's the gate zone? Here's the gate zone. That's actually, they don't have a resource, but they've drilled a lot up there, and they're basically branching out. So here you can see Kodiak drilled, Kodiak target, historic target. So there's a bunch of targets, because porphyries tend to show up in clusters. So they drilled here in the 15/6 area. That's one of the areas they drilled. So the takeaway I got from talking to the companies, that they now believe, based on geochemistry and water heating, this wasn't even known to be, I might be mistaken, but the impression I got, if I remember correctly, was that they were not sure. And here you can see the copper soil anomaly. I mean, you can, where's the scale bar? Here's 1 kilometer. So I mean, this is obviously a bit complex maybe, but it's like a large copper in soil anomaly. And most of the drilling here, there's been historic drilling, quite a bit. I think the average depth is like 120 meters. So barely scratched the surface. I don't know exactly when this was done, but I mean, you wouldn't even think about block caving or anything like that back, decades ago. I wouldn't think, at least. So my takeaway from what's important in this news release is that they confirmed that this soil anomaly here is porphyry. Not a high-grade part of a porphyry, but a porphyry nonetheless. And based on geochemistry and other factors, I'm sure, they now believe that this is not, several small clusters, let's say, of copper mineralization or mini porphyries, whatever. They now believe this might be one large system. This they didn't know was even porphyry until they confirmed it now. And it looks like it's the same kind of rocks as you have on the other side, and here you have a valley in between. That's quite interesting, because all of a sudden this looks like the footprint of maybe a very large porphyry. And the drilling that's been done here has mostly been 120 meters in depth, and you can see some, here for example. It's like this is kind of the historic drilling kind of stuff. And now they're doing deep drill holes and they're hitting low grade porphyry mineralization. So this obviously looks like, I would assume, a focus for this year. Because, okay, if let's say the gate zone is not enough to, have tech decide that, okay, that's a mine, for example. There's like, no, one gate zone, that's not large enough. But hey, this apparently is like 2-3 times larger footprint than the gate zone, which was basically the discovery / drilling that got Kodiak up to $2.28. So if the stock did that well on the gate zone, and I mean they drilled other places as well, but gate zone was the main anchor, let's say. If this is 2 to 3 times as large of a footprint, yes, then we're talking of some kind of price potential here. I'm not gonna guess any types of tons or whatever. It's like way early days. But you can imagine, okay, there's a target this big. Let's say I don't know where exactly they would drill, but I mean, they put in some deeper holes. They drill here, that's lower grade. Here I think they have some good grades as well. And the funny thing, I didn't actually know this too well, but if you're hitting like 0.3 copper equivalent, that's around the mined grade, I think, at nearby porphyry mines. So apparently BC is good in the sense, kind of like Sweden, that it's quite low cost, because I assume it's a lot of hydroelectric power and stuff like that. I didn't know that actually. I know that BC porphyries tend to be lower grade than the South American ones, but in South America, especially many of the latest discoveries, they're at 3,000-4,000 meters altitude, and that brings a lot of costs with them, so they need to be higher grade. So I mean, my takeaway, I'm probably I'm gonna be writing my case for this sooner or later, but I think it's a pretty simple case, Kodiak. I mean, if you like copper, obviously the majors love BC in Canada, especially BC. It feels like in Canada, it's porphyry country. They actually have good infrastructure. I think there's a few mines not too far away from here, so it's not like super remote. Especially not for a Canadian player, let's say. And I mean, the obvious thing is that if this ends up being a very large porphyry from 30 million CAD, I mean, if they would have success at this target or any other target for that matter, that made them go over the critical threshold for success. I mean, we know what GT Gold got bought for. Sure, they had an inferred resource, large one, but just an inferred resource. They were bought for, I think, 440 million at lower copper prices. So I think it's like always, I think the most important thing is the price paid. And we know the price is right now 30 million CAD. So it's not anywhere close to pricing in that this area here is a big porphyry, and that they will prove that in any time actually. And this becomes a let's say, a significant porphyry deposit or deposits. So that's the ones I like. It's like, okay, in case of success, you're looking at maybe a 10 to 20, 30 bagger potential. So even if it's a low chance of success, it might be worth it to, from a mathematical perspective, even though, again, the chance of success might be, low. So these are not stores, in my opinion, that, bet the farm on or anything like that. But it's like if you have, I don't know, 10 20 different plays with this kind of, risk reward profile, where it's like, if one actually shows to have something significant that could become a mine, that could become the interest of, their largest shareholder Tech, for example, then we're probably talking higher prices than we're seeing here, for example. That's the simple version of that. And then I wrote up a few ideas I just had about First Nordic and Magna mining, which right now, two largest positions in the hodl folios. And very large positions for me personally. Maybe I should just go through that. I planned on doing something more extensive perhaps, but at the same time I'm leaving for Deutsche Goldmesse tomorrow. Magna mining, if I think about it, it's like the base case, in my opinion, could be seen as, okay, maybe they have like $1 billion in NPV just based on what they have right now. I'm not saying they have that is literally absolutely worth that, but we know that there's a PA out, etc., and it's not with an updated resource and all of that, and it's self-funded, and then we can account for, okay, where do we think copper prices are headed, whatever. But let's just say that maybe if the base case plays out, they get Green Hill up and running over the next few years. Maybe there's a walk, let's say steady walk or semi-steady walk up towards 1 billion for Magna. Of course, nickel could crash tomorrow, copper could crash tomorrow, so anything could happen. But like, in my opinion, I could see it as a base case of like, yes, I can see this if they execute, and we literally have the best team to be able to execute. I could see a climb just based on what they have right now in the hand, the birds in the hands right now. I can see a climb over the next couple of years towards 1 billion, just based on that, assuming they do execute on it. Then, so in that case, obviously it's cheap, because I think right now the market cap's around 135 million CAD. They got, 8 million in cash or 10 million in cash, whatever. 135, quite a far bit away from 1 billion. So it's like, if they find, that's the beauty from a risk reward perspective, assuming they don't find anything more, but if they execute on what they have, maybe Magna will at least become worth $500 to $1 billion, let's say, in the next few years. Then we have free optionality. A newly talked about target Stumpy Bay, which apparently is a very large geophysical anomaly, and there's copper showings around that target, and they've actually hit, I think, copper and nickel in some historic holes not too far off from that geophysical anomaly. What could that be? It could be absolutely nothing, but then you still have the base case of Green Hill and Shakespeare. But it could also be something, because they have some of the, I would think, best Sudbury exploration geologists in the entire world. Well, Sudbury is a place, but you get my point. They basically have the best experts to be exploring in a Sudbury environment. So there's a chance that Stumpy Bay is something big and significant. Who knows? Maybe there's, of course nobody does know, but let's say there's a 5-10% chance of finding something worth $1 billion. Is that totally out of the question? A 5% chance? I'm not going to go higher than that. I think I like no-brainers again. I don't want to have too much precision where it's like, it's pricing in an 80% chance and I'm 100% certain, so I have a 20% upside or whatever. No, I prefer to be conservative and get positive surprises. Because if Stumpy Base comes up with nothing, will the share price react negatively? Yes, maybe. Will the value go down so much that this current price today of the stock makes Magna the stock overvalued relative to what they have? No, they have, in my opinion, at least $500 to $1 billion in base case potential. Footwall deposits, same thing there. Free optionality, in my opinion. And these can be worth a lot, and they can be very copper rich. And I'm getting quite bullish on copper. And especially if we're talking footwall deposits, they can be like, I don't know, 5 to 10% copper. So in that case, who cares what the copper price is? I mean, that's a bonus because you'll make money on it anyway. So that's company making potential. And already, I mean, that's the beauty. And acquisitions as well. We've already seen that they bought Green Hill for what? I don't even remember. But I think it was absolutely low. Because they did, of course, the PEA, which showed it's like, I don't actually remember the numbers, but like hundreds of millions of dollars. And with the potential to find footwall deposits and all of that. And they're finding really high grades near surface. So obviously, I mean, they probably bought something and that's worth 10 or 20 times what they bought it for. So let's say there's a possibility they can pull off another Green Hill. What's that worth risk adjusted today? No guarantees, but it's like, let's say this has a, again, extremely hard to say, but let's just put a 200 million value of an acquisition. And that's not a low count, I know, but we know how they acquired Green Hill, and that's obviously a steal. So we've seen they're able to do it. Will some of the other majors be that like generous? I don't know, but let's say 200 million. If there's a 50% chance, that's 100 million today. The risk-adjusted value. Footwall deposits, again, who knows? Maybe there's a 10% chance of finding something worth 500 million. 90% chance of failure. Is it that low? I don't know. If they find it, is it going to be worth 500 million? I don't know. I'm just coming up with a number. 10% of 500 is 50 million. Stumpy Bay, again, 5% chance of finding $1 billion. That's 50 million there as well. And starting off, there's like, in my opinion, at face value, there is no valuation downside to these things. At face value, I think it's risk-free upside, optionality. That's the beauty. And yeah, I mean, then you have the macro optionality, like 60% of nickel coming from Indonesia, majority of PGMs coming from Russia and South Africa. So that's working right now because the world's getting nickel from Indonesia. And I think, well, this is actually getting kind of banned on LME at least. So that's, I guess, already up in the air. But still, I mean, both of these countries are obviously kind of shit shows right now. And this is when they're working, we have these prices. So we have also in our back pocket the possibility that supply chains break down. And that would be positive for nickel prices in the West, and copper prices in the West, and PGMs in the West. And since that's not happened yet, and I think Magna is already cheap based on current metal prices, yes, I think that's also kind of free optionality. And then I just list a few, like why this might be an opportunistic undervaluation, because, like, let's face it, you want to be able to explain why you think it's cheap, not just, oh, it looks cheap, but I have no idea why it's actually cheap. No psychological reasons. It's, the saying, if you're at a poker table, if you can't spot the fish, then you are the fish. But I think some of these are legit reasons why this might be cheaper than it should, and mostly, again, psychological sentiment based. First Nordic, and again, this was just a draft, but like reasons for opportunistic undervaluation. Merged entity, prior shareholders might not see First Nordic as the case they bought into, because if you were a Barsele shareholder, you had an idea for that, and now it's First Nordic, and you might like, oh, I don't want to think about a new case. The Barsele was so boring, so I'm getting out or whatever. Or maybe the same with Gold Line. There's like, share prices were at multi-year lows down from I think a high of actually 70 million went down to like 4 million or something. Obviously that can leave quite a bit of people disgruntled. So I think you might have some of that going on, like legacy shareholders, whatever. Yeah, and this obviously ties into that. Barsel on the back burner. Barsel Minerals rose high and fell hard on the back of decreasing focus from Agnico, bored to death. And so far there's been, we haven't seen any evidence of that changing because the value hasn't gone anywhere. The deposit hasn't really changed since 2021, except for the better, given the gold price environment in Sweden and the mining environment in Sweden and what was I going to say? I think the national interest designation came after this, after 2021, when they did their deal, which I think had an implied value of like 80 to 90 million for 45% of 55% of Barsele, and that was at much, but it was at I think $300-400 lower gold price and worse environment in Sweden, for example. So some might be like, yeah, okay, I've seen this before, and not stuff hasn't happened yet, if you know what I mean. I think they're working on a deal with Agnico, so that's and Tasha said as much as himself that would be, totally transformational. So if they're able to do that this year, I think it could go up a lot in a hurry in that case. Otherwise, you still have that 45% interest carried. So that's again margin of safety. Agnico Eagle done resource and project, and you have 45% of it in a $2,300 gold price environment in a more favorable jurisdiction, which is tier 1 to begin with. Yeah, I think it's cheap just based on that. Kind of like Magna, that exploration success is a free optionality because you're buying what's already proven for pennies on the dollar. So most of the exploration stories obviously tend to be like, we don't have anything really, we don't have a margin of safety, but there's let's say a low chance that we might have something significant, and then you'll make money. Otherwise you don't have a project, and you're looking at minus 50% easy. And of course, few North American investors are aware of Sweden, probably have no references to any success stories. That's the fun part. It's like Rick Rule says, Canadians are Canada-centric, which I can see that, because it's kind of the same in Sweden. In Sweden, the mining companies in Sweden I'm not going to say it's a cult, but it's like, for some reason we love to punt on mining companies. There's been quite a few Swedish ventures. Most of them did not end well, but they had like ministers as shareholders. I looked at Lapland Gold Miners, which used to own parts of the gold line ground. They had Ingvar Kamprad, yes, the founder of IKEA, as a shareholder, which is, I find absolutely hilarious. He was one of the richest men on the planet when he was around. That says something. That's like one of the most famous people and richest in Sweden's history, and he was invested in a gold explorer developer called the Lapland Gold Miners. And again, we've had ministers. Actually, the Copperstone project in the Copperstone Minerals or Resources, or whatever the name is, they're a copper developer in northern Sweden, listed on Swedish exchange. They have one of the largest state-owned pension funds as shareholder. That's quite interesting in my opinion. So that I think that goes to show that Swedes like to buy Swedish listed miners in Sweden, or exploration companies. Canadians love to buy Canadian listed, but they don't even care about their Canadian listed right now though. But here you have a case where it's listed in Canada, but the project is in Sweden. So there's the mismatch. Retail North American Canadian retail market is dead, and they give two shits about a project in Sweden, because if they cared about the Canadian projects. Whereas in Sweden they really care about Swedish projects. but they can't buy this because it's listed in Canada. Well, they can. I can buy it, but I think a lot of people simply prefer to buy on the Swedish exchanges. So in now, I mean, if we're gonna place out some scenarios, let's say this year, First Nordic is able to get operatorship of the Borssele project and raise money and drill a lot. Prove it's not 2.5 million ounces, it's more like 3 to 4, maybe up to 5 million ounces from Borssele alone, and maybe drill some holes at Påbacken, and you have one of these days, but like sometime you're listed in Sweden, where they actually love to buy Swedish gold miners, because you have Botten Exploration with their 30,000 ounce gold mine with a market cap of like 56 million CAD. That's more than First Nordic, and First Nordic has 45% of the single largest gold deposit in Sweden. So yeah, I mean, those are some scenarios. I obviously don't think that's priced in. Yeah, anyway, that's enough for me, I think. Consider me biased. I own shares of all companies mentioned. I think most, if not all, are banner sponsors as well, so consider me twice biased in that case. Oh, I almost forgot. District Metals, strong visual polymetallic sulfide mineralization at the Tom Tebow project. You can read the news release by yourselves. Intervals here, 17 meters, semi-massive to massive sulfide, 21 meters, and this is with drilling done by, well, I don't think it's maybe done by them, but this is in the joint venture kind of thing with Boliden. So, I mean, yes, encouraging signs. 60 meters disseminated stringer style copper rich sulfide mineralization. 6 meters. We don't have assays, we have visuals. The market gave two shits, so it's pretty obvious that District Metals is in the eyes of the retail share. First of all, nobody cares about base metals yet, really, and but they do care about uranium for District Metals right now. So yes, obviously this is encouraging news. Who knows what this might be worth, these base metal projects. But in the eyes of the markets, I don't think most people right now are buying District because of the base metal projects or the joint venture with or the deal with Boliden. They're speculating on the uranium moratorium. But still, again, I mean, if this is good and the market doesn't care, that does not mean that the news didn't happen or that the value didn't go up. It's just that, okay, maybe nobody really will care, or they will, who knows. But this is, again, it's like these kind of dislocations or whatever. I mean, that's kind of what you want to see. Obviously, the big thing is in 14 days, 15th of May, when they're supposed to give out the recommendation from the uranium study. Then we might have fireworks, up or down. Because if they recommend that they should lift the moratorium on uranium in Sweden, then that's likely going to happen, maybe this year. And then all of a sudden, every single uranium play in Sweden is in play. And that goes for Mawson, which has a lot of conventional uranium deposits, and it also goes for, obviously, District Metals with their Viken deposit, which is the second largest uranium deposit in the world. So I mean, I can see there's potential for some speculative mania this year, starting from 15th of May, assuming we get a positive outcome. Yeah, so consider me biased, own shares, banner sponsors. Otherwise, my strategy hasn't changed. I'm going to be selling my juniors when I think they're overvalued, not a second before, and I don't care if gold or silver is down or up today or tomorrow, whatever, because I don't see that making them expensive. Let's put it like that. Thanks for listening. I probably won't be doing another video until I get back from Deutsche Goldmesse. So yeah, like a week or so quiet from me. Just stick to your guns, focus on important thing, buy cheap. etc. Bye bye.